Let's look at a definition here. To concentrate means pursuing a selected activity with sufficient persistence and precision, as well as to ignore other things irrelevant to the task. You see, this definition is rather broad, and this is no coincidence, because concentration is a very broad ability in itself and is the basis for all higher cognitive functions. For example, text comprehension and numerical abilities are all good and fine, but in order to actually use them, you first have to concentrate on the text or the numbers. So we see that concentration is the base for all tasks where some kind of information is consciously perceived and processed. That does not only cover intellectual tasks like reading or calculating, as I mentioned, but also practical tasks like, for example, operating heavy machines. This is why, especially in safety-related jobs, concentration is an important predictor for safe behavior. You kind of have to concentrate on the machine in order to operate it safely and not harm yourself or others. Also, from the employer perspective, you do not only need to select applicants who can concentrate well, but you oftentimes have to ensure that the concentration ability of your employees is sufficient throughout their employment, for example, by periodically testing their ability to concentrate. And all of this is why we have designed TACO to be used primarily in the field of human resources. That is staff and management assessment, as I mentioned, with the text comprehension and numerical abilities, but that is also job and career placement when you want to try to figure out where a person would fit in career-wise. It is important in manufacturing and safety assessment and also in academic testing. And all of these different fields are very different, but they all have in essence the same question. Does the applicant fit the requirement of the job or course of study? So we are clearly talking about classic aptitude testing here. And I know this is not really surprising. Aptitude testing has been around for quite some time and is nothing new to most people. However, the modern aptitude testing is facing a few different challenges than, say, 10 years ago. Not so much in terms of periodic testing, but in the initial personnel selection. We live in an age of globalization where it is actually not granted that an applicant lives nearby and is able to attend an on-site testing just like that. This increases also the range of accessibility and can lead to higher numbers of applicants in a shorter amount of time, which is kind of a luxury problem, but ideally you still would want to test all of them. And last but not least, if applicants live far away, online testing on the computer is not a new thing. We have done that for years, but especially younger people nowadays rely more on mobile devices than on classic desktop PCs. So you see here a graph, and I will try to enhance it so that we can look at it in more detail. We can clearly see that the usage of mobile devices, that is the line here in green, has increased about as much as the use of desktop PCs has decreased. That's the blue line here. So today, it is actually more likely that a person has a smartphone than a desktop PC. And this reflects in the requirement of online testing. All of this leads to a few new requirements that aptitude tests have to meet. Aptitude tests do not only need to select suitable applicants anymore, they also have to reach those applicants all around the world. And since most of those applicants now own a smartphone and not a computer, they have to reach them on a smartphone too. And all of this leads us straight into our new concentration test, because we have created TACO with all of this in mind. And now my colleague will provide you with more details about it.
Thank you very much, Nicole. To tackle those requirements just mentioned, we followed a new and modern approach with TACO to offer new possibilities. So TACO was developed according to the mobile first principle. That means it was optimized for testing on mobile devices. At the same time, it is still usable on a desktop PC, just as you used to from our regular tests. By extending the area of application to smartphones, younger target groups can be reached more easier. And this is why we also added a suitable norm sample to TACO, as you can see here from the age spectrum from 14 to 90 years. So we also included the younger target groups so that you can use the full potential of the mobile first principle. The tasks of TACO also allow largely language-free testing and high internationalization. Let's have a look at a practice example here. As you can see, there's a matrix with 9 figures in it. And at the top of it, there's a criterion for the target stimulus. And the task is to look at the criterion, and here says 1 triangle, 2 dots, and then identify figures in a matrix which match the criterion. So as we can see here, this would be this figure here with 1 triangle and 2 dots, this one in the middle, and this one in the lower left corner. The instructions are facilitated by sample tasks. So we tried to visualize the instruction phase more to make it more pleasant for the participant to learn what to do. At the same time, we tried to reduce the impact the language has on the test itself. At the end of each instruction phase, a practice task ensures that instructions are correctly understood. So, of course, those instructions are also available in several languages. The test phase itself runs completely language-free. As you can see here, the item or task material is only based on figures, not on words. Furthermore, 2 test forms enable repeated testing as well as periodic employee testing. We offer a standard form of TACO as well as a parallel form. And the fixed time per task enables time-efficient testing. And how this works is that for each task or each item, you have exactly 6 seconds to solve the item. And after the 6 seconds, it will switch to the next task. Of course, the criterion will change between those 2 tasks or between every task, and the 9 figures in the matrix will also change. And so we end up with 50 tasks, each of them 6 seconds, in addition the instruction phase, which will lead us to around 8 minutes. And no matter whether the participant works slow or fast, the test duration will always be about the same. The presentation of results is kept intuitive for interpretation. As you can see here, we have only three variables. The ability to concentrate is, of course, the main variable. Then we have additional information, the number of missed reactions, and the number of false alarms. The ability to concentrate is measured by correctly selected symbols or figures. That means all symbols or figures that matched the criterion and were selected by the participant. The number of missed reactions is or counts all the figures that actually should have been selected because they matched the criterion but weren't selected by the participant. And the number of false alarms counts all figures or symbols that have been selected, although they did not match the criterion. And of course, results between desktop and smartphone users are comparable, which is very important. If we have a look at both test forms here, we can see S1, the standard form, and S2, the parallel form. Then we can see here that the main variable, ability to concentrate, was measured with 2 groups in the norm sample, the smartphone group and the desktop group. Each group contains or includes around 150 participants. And at the first glance, we can see that the mean between those 2 groups does only differ slightly, or with a very, very small difference. And if we have a look at the test statistics, we see that there's no significant difference. And the same accounts for the parallel form. If we look at the ability to concentrate here, we have both groups again, same sample sizes, and again, means only differ slightly, and the test statistics says there's no significant difference. That means that the device on which the test was performed does not affect the results. But what we can see here, what is interesting is that if we have a look at the means of the standard form and a look at the means of the parallel form, we can see that the means of the parallel form, or the S2, are slightly higher than the standard form. And this is because we use the same sample for both test forms. The advantage of this is that we take into account potential learning effects that could occur if you do the same test twice, of course, with different task material, but still the same test. And by doing so, we enable repeated testing, for example, if you do online screenings with a lot of participants or applicants. And you send out the TACO for the online screening, and you select the potentially suited participants and invite them to an on-site testing, a more extensive testing. Then you can let them do TACO again to verify the results of the online screening, and potential learning effects that occur because the same test is, of course, now performed twice are taken into account. So, in summary, TACO combines attractive presentation and mobile testing with scientific standards. Of course, it meets psychological quality criteria, as all our tests at Schulfried do. It has a time limit per item, which makes the test duration controllable. So compared to other tests, which can only be done on site or offline, especially to other concentration tests, it is not inferior at all. In addition, it can be applied via browser to do online testings and has short and animated instructions. This makes it easy to do testings worldwide or across different languages. And it is optimized for smartphones and has a modern and attractive design. to reach younger target groups which mainly rely on smartphones as their main device. All this leads to one of TACO's strengths, which lies in the screening of our screening applications with little time expenditure. And because we have another test with this strength, the so-called INT, or our inventory for testing of cognitive abilities, we combined them in a test set, this safety screening. This is meant to be used in the area of safety because both abilities, concentration ability and the general mental ability, are very important here.